Hi, everyone. Hey. There's a little song in my heart right now. That song's so beautiful, and that it has an Irish background to it is additionally awesome. Everything Irish is cool to me. Yeah. So, wow. So I want to open, the Irish are good at telling tales, so I'll open with a tale about faith. So there's a tale about a young boy whose family home caught on fire. And so in a panic, instead of running down and out, the boy runs up and ends up on the roof. And so he flees, he's stuck on the roof of this house that's on fire. His dad, of course, the mature thing, runs out the door, and his dad's outside and can see his son up on the roof. And he sees the son and calls out to him, "Son, jump, I'll catch you," right? But the son is really panicked right now, and so he's up there on the roof, and he can hear his father, but, in his panic, he's like looking down, and really all he can see is fire, flames, and smoke. And as he looks down, all he can see is darkness. But he can hear his father's voice. And he hears his father's voice again, repeatedly, saying, "Son, jump, I'll catch you. Son, jump, I will catch you. Son, jump, I will catch you." And the son hears this, but still, he's terrified. But he realizes that he should do something, and so he responds. And he says, "Daddy, I can't see you." And his father replies, "But I can see you, and that's all that matters." Here in Unity, we teach that faith is our power, our ability, our capacity to believe and to trust in that which we cannot see, not with our human eyes. And we also teach that this faith that I'll be talking about and clarifying today, because we have a certain perspective on faith that might be different from the norm, that this faith that we talk about is actually the foundation of our entire spiritual development and practice. It is the very rock, if you will, from which we start to realize our innate divine nature, because here in Unity, we teach oneness with God. We teach that within ourselves is this innate divinity, and we teach the 12 powers as the primary means of unfolding that glory. We teach the 12 powers as the primary means of coming into the awakening or the awareness of these truths, right? So I want to start here with that. And with that, I want to share with you this idea that at some point in our lives, at some point in each of our lives, and I would say repeatedly for many of us, there comes a time where we feel a call to go deeper, to go higher, to be more expansive. And I know for me personally, it's as if up until then, there's a way in which the focus of my life until that moment was deeply personal and self-centered. So that the movement of my life was primarily about how do I get my personal needs met? But then at this time, there's this call to expand that awareness and that focus, so that I start to think, How do I get universal or spiritual needs met? The call to expand my awareness of what wholeness and oneness means, right? And so in Unity, co-founder of the Unity movement, Charles Fillmore, teaches this about the 12 powers and this view of what happened for Jesus along his journey. And he says this is out of his book, The 12 Powers. When Jesus had attained a certain soul development, he called the 12 apostles to him. And so when man, humankind, is developing out of mere personal consciousness into spiritual consciousness, he begins to train deeper and larger powers. He sends his thought down into the inner centers of the organism, and through the word quickens them to life. And where before his powers have worked in the personal, now they begin to expand and work in the universal. So today we're going to begin this journey of unfoldment, starting by calling the first apostle that Jesus called, which was Peter. So Peter in Unity represents our faculty of faith. And so oftentimes in 12 Powers meditations, you'll see us focus on the center of the head just as a focal point, knowing that consciousness isn't embodied, but it's a good focal point. And for those of you who delve deeper into the Bible and might look at things like numbers and colors, the focus of faith is dark blue. And so you can look at themes of how in not just Unity, but other cultures, people associate colors with certain things. Like I know purple has often been associated with spirituality in general. So I'm just going to say that on the forefront, though we won't delve into it, because I want this to be a very practical discussion about faith. So I want to begin, I want to talk about really two things. I want to first talk about faith from a Unity perspective, and I hope demystify faith for some of us. And then I want to talk about how we can develop our spiritual faculty of faith. So again, a very practical or pragmatic view of faith. So I want to start with this notion that faith as belief, as the power to believe, isn't some special mystical quality that is only embodied in some of the higher, like spiritual teachers. I've heard people say things like, there are certain people who have more faith than me, and I wish I had more faith. But the foundational teaching that we believe here in Unity is that each and every one of us is imbued with perfect faith. That faith is innate in us. It's the capacity to believe. Have you ever believed that the future could be different from the past? Have you ever believed in your personal power to change yourself or your life? Of course, we use this faculty of belief not always in ways that serve us best, right? There is a way in which we can even see that cynicism is a demonstration of faith. But cynicism is how we place our faith in disappointment. We place our faith in things not working out. And so we exercise this innate quality in a way that sets us up to focus on, to perceive less than the totality of goodness that might be here for us through our exercise of this innate quality of faith. I wanted to share a book. I love this book because, partly because I know the person who wrote it, and the dedication's to me, so that's kind of... Faith, he writes, D. Patrick Miller is the author. Faith is a more practical way to deal with everyday life than cynicism, toughness, or defensiveness. Faith can be sensible and savvy, and practicing it daily increases its usefulness and reliability. Yet faith is also tinged with mystery, for it is the connection to our unknown potential and the power of creation itself. Faith is the way out of misery, the way in to self-knowledge, and the way toward a more fulfilling and effective life. And he adds, and a very important point here in Unity, most people might define faith as a belief in God. This book, and what we teach here, is about faith as learning to maintain a constant contact with God, by whatever name you want to call God. And by God, he says, I mean the universal and marvelously creative energy that moves us all. By recognizing and affirming that energy, we can become increasingly peaceful and wise. So faith is practical. And practicing faith, this is important to say, because there are certain traditions when we emphasize faith in a fact, right? If we do not believe, for instance, in this faith that Jesus died for our sins, then all is not well, right? We lack faith. If we do not believe in a certain religious belief system, then the idea is that we lack faith. And so it's important for me to share that that's not at all Unity's perspective. And in fact, in stark contrast, practicing faith, as I shared in our sermon, Losing My Religion, several weeks ago, practicing faith isn't the same thing as holding to a particular religion or viewpoint. In fact, it can impair it. Why? Because faith is weakened by too much believing. Faith can be weakened by too much believing in certain facts and things of the world. Because faith is the willingness to take a chance on what we do not yet already believe. Faith is about the willingness to take a chance on that which we previously believed was impossible. For me, foundationally, faith is actually about being able to see the impossible and see how the impossible could be made possible. And then to see how the possible can be made actual. Faith in unity is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to mold universal God substance into expression. By your faith, you are healed. By faith, all things are possible. And that's the teaching. So, I want to clarify, though, because if you're anything like me, I remember I was a philosophy major and I was a lawyer, so there's a deep skeptic in me. If you're anything like me, even the Daily Word, when I read the Daily Word, I have to say that it triggered some old beliefs of mine around lack of faith. Because, anything is possible. Has there ever been a time when you prayed for the healing of someone you loved and they weren't healed? And you thought, I prayed with faith? And have you ever prayed in a time where not only was someone not healed, but someone left you, right? They passed away, they made their transition. Have you ever prayed for a job? Thought you had it? Thought you had all the faith in the world and didn't get it? Right? Have you ever prayed for love, for a certain relationship, for the healing of that, and not experience keeping that person, right? So when I read the all things are possible with God, there was this part of me that's like, I need to explain this. Because I had to come to a place where I could reconcile that understanding for myself. And here in Unity, what's so important to know is, yes, we believe in the power of faith to make manifest from this invisible spiritual substance we call God some concrete things in our lives. But what I believe goodness guarantees is not a specific form of good, right? Meaning, there is a benevolence that is smarter than I am. There is a benevolence that considers all people, whereas I may not, right? But if I entrust, if I invest my belief energy in this, then I'm going to maximize the fact that this goodness, smarter than me, more loving than my solo self, is going to express that in my life and world in ways that I cannot begin to comprehend. And so I got clear that before, when I thought I had faith in God, no. What I had faith in is that if I prayed faithfully to this entity, that my personal needs would and wish lists would be acquired, right? But that's faith in form. That's faith in the world. That's faith in the material, not in the spiritual. And when I'm like that, my joy and my peace rises and falls in accordance to what? Getting what I want through prayer or not, right? Even if what I want, I've graduated, I don't want Mercedes-Benz anymore. I want healing for the world, right? So it's like as I evolve spiritually, I might think, well, my wants are a little bit more spiritual now. But they're still about attachment to the form in which good takes. And so if I can go back of that and simply trust that there is a beneficent energy that is pressing forward in the world and will manifest in greater ways in accordance to my faith, if I can trust that, that shifts my energy around attachment to form. That doesn't mean I don't want specific people and things sometimes. But what it does mean is that I have a clearer view. That in the midst of what seems like chaos, I can know peace because I have an underlying belief that what is happening is actually in the highest good, not just of me, but of all. That's what I can know through spiritual faith. Because, this weirdness to me, when it says faith, most people are like, oh, faith is about believing in God. That is still about believing in a thing that is outside myself. So here in Unity, spiritual faith is about believing in truth with a capital T. It's about believing in the realm of divine ideas, which we teach. And some of those ideas are like this, that you are worthy, whole, and beloved, worthy of all good, all love, all prosperity in this world, and so is everybody else. Those are our universal truth teachings that we believe are the very fabric of this universe, right? This realm of divine ideas. God, all God is consciousness, this realm of divine ideas. And so in some ways, spiritualizing my faith is really about maturity, right? Because I am now working to believe in what is true, what is absolutely true, what is true beyond appearances of the finite aspects of this world. So I believe in these universal truths that we teach here in Unity, the truth of abundance, the truth that we can resource from the infinite all we need, all the wisdom we need to make clear decisions that are in the highest interests of everyone involved. What we need to rise out of a state of despair in our lives. What we need to love our family more deeply and more fully, and not just our personal family, but the family of mankind, of humankind, right? And so that's the spiritual faith we're talking about here in Unity. The capacity to believe and trust in divine ideas. And so what I want to share here are 3 very practical approaches that have served me in awakening to this. And why do I want to? Sure, in some ways it's for this personal need I have to actually feel peaceful sometimes in life, right? That by doing this, by making this investment, I move into a place where I can feel greater peace in the world. I want to share this wonderful quote from one of my favorite Unity ministers of all time, Eric Butterworth. He said this: "Faith doesn't influence God out there to send riches to fill our needs down here." And there's great. Faith is the spiritual capacity by which we may form and shape this ever-present basic element of spiritual substance. Certainly, all things are possible, not because God makes an exception for you by reason of your plea, but because your faith is the key to the kingdom of the power within you to apply the laws that transcend human limitations. So how do we do this? The first comes from the Bible. Judge not by appearances, but judge with right or righteous judgment. Our metaphysical interpretation of that is not, again, not as simple as don't judge by materialism. It's this idea that in the world we always perceive finite love. In my family, if my dad loved my sister, he loved me less. You know, that was my perception. There's only so much love to go around. And if it's there, it's not here. And same thing, if someone prospered in the past, I was so jealous of folks who I thought were more attractive or had more money or just more success in the world because I didn't believe there was enough of that stuff to go around. There was a finite resource there. And so when we have this worldly perspective, things stay small. When we have this worldly perspective, we also see each other in such a limited way. And so we see each other not in our glory, not beholding the indwelling Christ, but instead we see where they fall short, right? We have these judgments on other people. And so this is sort of fundamentally about the willingness to see beyond appearances, to see with something other than our worldly eyes, the person, the thing, the situation that is before us. Even that willingness alone opens a door. Why? Because we have this faculty of faith, which is our faculty to perceive and believe. And to the extent that it is directed at this thing, it cannot see God. And so all we do is we pivot. We pivot away from the focus of our faith on that thing, right? And we perceive beyond that. One way. Another way is this: practice dwelling on impossible things. And so for this lesson, I want to draw from this sacred text known as Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Alice laughs. "There's no use trying," she said. "One can't believe impossible things." "I dare say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "When I was younger, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast," says the Queen. Why is this important? Because we get very realistic about the world and our lives, right? And it is important to take a realistic snapshot. But if we're overly dwelling on what is, how are we to be the ones to help birth what could be possible for the world, right? So there's a balance. Check in, take a snapshot, get real about what is, and then get true about what is possible, what hasn't existed yet, right? Whether in your life or in the life of the world or of the nation. You know, even now when we see the conflict in our nation, it's so important, yes, to be realistic and to take the snapshot. It's like, where are we today? But if we were only doing that, or even taking a snapshot of today and of yesterday, there is no possibility for us to birth a better future. We have to see through eyes of faith in order to see what's not been there before in our personal lives or in the world. So that's the second practical lesson. And the third is to take action from a place of faith. And in 12-step circles, there's a saying, fake it till you make it. Well, there's a Unity teacher who has converted that to faith it till you make it. And so she tells a story in her book, Divine Audacity. This is Linda Marcel Whitsett, who happens to be the new director of Silent Unity out at Unity Village. And she tells the story of a farming community that was suffering through this protracted drought. And so the local minister calls forth a prayer time, in the old-fashioned ways, so we're all going to pray for rain. And so the local minister, he calls forth a prayer time, and everyone comes over to the town hall, and the minister's walking around and looking for familiar faces, and then suddenly, it's like the seas parted. In the back of the room, he looks and he sees people are starting to move aside because there is a little girl who has arrived holding an umbrella. Right? A lot of times I find myself doing the opposite, right? I might pray to get centered in the faithful knowing of something, like a new job. But my actions don't testify to that faith. In the next minute, I'm on Craigslist looking up employment jobs, just anxiously seeking out that, not showing up with follow-up actions that testify it's going to rain, right? That testify to the faith. So how can we do these three things, which is first be willing to release our faith in people, things, even our notion of God, all of which will ultimately fail and disappoint us? How can we withdraw that faith in a way that frees it to be focused on the invisible? How can we also take time in our day to practice the awareness of the impossible? To dream the big dream for our lives and for the world, to allow our feeling nature and not just our thinking nature to absorb what it might be like if the world were actually at peace. If my own household were actually at peace. If my own mind were actually at peace. Could I even fathom that? Because to do that is the beginning of having it, right? The beginning. And then how finally can I further my spiritual faith? By taking actions with the expectation that good is around the corner. It may not come in the form of rain, but it could come in the form of other types of abundance. The sharing of crops from the neighborhood town. Right? If I get overly attached to the form, I may not be receptive to the other. But that analogy is just a good reminder to us. Do I take steps and act as if what I say I believe is going to actually come true? And so those are the three ways I want to share with you today. So I want to close this time and then open a time of meditation. I want to close this time with a wonderful passage by the same author, Linda Marcella Whitsett, again, the director now of Silent Unity, Unity's prayer arm. Her book, by the way, is called Divine Audacity, Dare to be the Light of the World. When others are in need, she says, when challenged by disease, when medical bills have drained the bank account, when your lover leaves, when times are tough, there is no better time to pivot in the direction of the infinite self. We can stand in the midst of human circumstances, undaunted by them, putting on the mantle of divinity, so to speak, as we are willing to disregard frightening or troubling appearances, illness, death, lack, and loneliness. We long to rise above our circumstances, pluck the jewel out of the muck, make something better out of the bad, and transform trouble into blessing. The drive to be greater than human thoughts, feelings, and experience is natural to us because we are divine.